Okay, so I'll start with some recent updates from science and tech. And my plan is to mostly spend my time on some of the topics from the third section here, from philosophy and humanities. But I'll start with some of the science and tech updates today. So, so from space tech, in the recent few weeks, we talked a lot about the moon economy and the in-orbit economy and so on. But most of it was just American companies. But I think last week, Skyroot launched their rocket, which was the first Indian privately launched rocket to reach orbit. This was the first time that it happened. And so I've put this one for reference because there is a lot of confusion between what does it mean to reach orbit.
Okay, before that, what does it mean to launch a rocket? Because rocket is the thing that sends things to the orbit, right?
Yes, so the way the things are structured is that the payload is usually at the top of the rocket. So the rest of it is the body, which the whole purpose of the rest of the body is to send the payload to the destination, whether it's the low Earth orbit or whether it's the moon or the Mars, whatever. But the objective of the rocket is to take it from the surface of the Earth, allow it to escape uh, allow it to reach the escape velocity and get it outside the Earth's gravitational pull. That's the objective of the rocket.
That is what SpaceX and a few companies are able to do, right? So this is also a rocket, not the payload we are talking about.
Yes, but by definition, the payload has to it's like saying like the car went there. Like by definition, I mean like that there's a human that is going there as well. It's not like that empty car has gone there. Like that's the whole point here. So the
No, no, but
payload definitely has to be there.
my point is when we say first privately launched rocket, so is it a milestone because it is the rocket that was built by India or the payload itself, only the payload?
No, it was the rocket because this company is a rocket launch company. Its business model is somewhat like SpaceX. It's a like a provider, launch provider kind of
So they
company.
did not use any other company's services to launch. It was entirely by themselves.
Yes, that is their whole company. They're like the kind of SpaceX. They provide the launch services. The payload maybe of like some other company might put their own payload in there.
And it was from which location, the launch?
I'm not sure which location was it, but I'll look into this now. So I'm not sure, but it is somewhere from India because I hope it's somewhere from India. But the objective, okay, now what the thing I was talking about is the orbit. So the distance that it reached was the low Earth orbit. So which is about the range about for LEO is from 160 kilometers to the 2000 kilometers. So I believe it reached about 450 kilometers. And this was their second launch attempt actually. So I think the last time they did it, it was suborbital. The whole point of calling it suborbital is that it was not able to reach high enough height to be able to orbit around the Earth. So it reached up to a certain height and then it fell down. So that's the whole thing. So the last time it tried, it was a suborbital
Why
thing.
is the range overlap between VLEO and LEO?
What did you say?
Why is there a range overlap in terms of distance between very low Earth orbit and low Earth orbit?
Yes. From my point of view, I think is that VLEO is a very recent classification. Earlier, there was only LEO, MEO, and GEO, and probably HEO as well. And VLEO is a very recent one because, as I said, like mostly they are newer companies because the traditional range where LEO satellites orbit. Those are becoming very crowded. So the newer satellites are trying to come at the very lower end of the, they're targeting the very lower end of the LEO spectrum. And for that reason, they have like mentioned it as VLEO. And now I do not know the classification behind what ranges, why does LEO start from 160 and end to 2000. I don't know exactly what that is, but I assume that this classification was most likely done by people in science or technology, or like science or engineering. But VLU, I think it's more of a marketing term. And once this kind of, and just as you have already realized, like from the past few weeks of discussion, like it is becoming a lot of space is becoming commercialized over time. And and commercialization means business. And when business comes, they come with buzzwords. So that's the whole point of businesses. Not the whole point, but a very important part of their whole existence is coming up with buzzwords and those kind of things. And once those kind of things happens, so things become a bit blurry, which reminded me of blurry. It is blurry. Okay. Uh, as I was saying, whenever scientists or engineers try to classify something, they are very, very accurate. There is no room for ambiguity. Like for example, you might remember, like back in school, we studied organic chemistry, and they had the naming conventions, like one, two, three, like dimethyl, something like that. So I found it very interesting because there is no room for ambiguity. Like you need to know the whole connections between the carbon atoms and so on. And there is one very specific name. There is no ambiguity between one molecule or other. Similarly goes in biology, like the scientific name, like Homo sapiens and so on. Like that is one thing. Homo sapiens means only one thing. There is no another thing. But when it comes to business, like they can name one product 10 different things depending on who they're selling it to. So it's all about ambiguity. Like I face this on a daily basis when I work. And yeah, so my point was that VLEO might most likely be a outcome of this thing, since space is becoming more business oriented, and maybe it's more likely an outcome of businesses. Okay, so anyway, that was the whole thing. And okay, let's now move on to the question about where was it launched from. From Andhra Pradesh. So this is the location. I think a lot of rockets are launched from this location from India when it comes to India. So the last one they launched was 4 years ago almost, 2022. And another thing, the first question that came to me was that uh, do they still have, because this was their first ever rocket launch. So what business were they in so far? So from a quick research, I found that currently their money comes from selling hardware equipments to some other companies, aerospace and other space startups in India. So this they have, okay, because this is their first one, so they haven't earned any revenue from this launch business so far. But I also found like from ChatGPT itself that they took some payloads from here. Let me just look at this. Yeah, so it says that this mission carried 6 payloads. So it was not just a demo, it was also a real actual business. So
Mm.
that was that. But it says that, however, most of this did not come from rocket launches because it was only done on 18th of. So FY 26 means from April 1 of 1st of April of 2025 till 31st of March 2026. So this was the previous financial year. They earned 100 crore rupees. And since they did not launch any rocket in that time period, so all of that came from manufacturing and supplying space hardware, such as, yeah, those kind of things, to other things. So, yeah, but I'm assuming that their long-term goal is to be a space launch company. Again, now, what I found is that there are about during the process of this research over the past few days, I found that there are about 200 space startups in India. So until very recently, I did not have a lot of idea about the space industry in India, like mostly the private space industry in India, what was going on there. I was a lot more aware about what's going on in the US, but not much about India. So this might be my starting point to know more about this, and maybe then once I learn, then I'll also cover what's happening in India along with the American and the European space related stories. Because they have this launch capability, that means there has to be Indian space satellite companies as well, because who else will they be serving? They need to be serving someone. They need to have some kind of customers. So I'll have to look more into this and see what's going to happen. So that was briefly about this. The other brief story now is related to computing. So which is a few open source models were released last week, and it has been in the news. So Kimi has released and their Kimi K3 model, which is supposed to be open source. So so far they have not released it, as far my knowledge goes, like they will make it open source. Like they release it on 27th of July of this month. So today's 23, like in 4 days time. But anyway, it's going to be open source. And from all the reports that are coming, people are saying that it is very close to, it beats most of Anthropic's and OpenAI's models, apart from the most mysterious model that Anthropic has, which is the Fable, I think Fable. So, and yeah, so that is thing. So uh, it's very close to this proprietary models. So
Again, but I was reading a news, or mostly it was a headline I read. Some I don't know who he was, US government person or something like that, was accusing again of Kimi of distilling Anthropic's model. I don't know how true it is or on what basis they're claiming this, but that narrative is also still there.
yes, exactly. When I was about to say the same thing, like I have also heard those reports. I was about to make that point. Uh, it's the same as the video the discussion that you did a few months ago. Was it the same thing?
Yeah,
Or was
it's the
it the
same
other way
point.
around? It was the same.
They, yeah, they were at that point accusing I think DeepSeek, Alibaba. I think Kimi is by Moonshot or
Yes,
something like this, right?
yes.
So they were accused at that point also. So yeah, it's the same topic. Yes.
Okay. So I think about that time itself, or maybe a few weeks after the discussion, I found, I don't know if it was a video or an article, but it was the opposite accusation. Like the Chinese were accusing the American of distilling their models. So again, like these are all like what is it called? Accusations without a lot of like concrete proof. So again, I've also heard about this accusation currently, this recent about Kimi K3, but again, there are no like any substantial evidence to prove what's happening or not. But what is going to happen is that so there are a few consequences about this open source model. So the first thing that you have mentioned is that these accusations have started. So what this might cause is banning. Like they might ban Chinese models to be preventing them to be used in United States. That might happen. And maybe it's true that Kimi K3 was distilled, or maybe this acquisition is part of this whole strategy of building this story narrative that okay, that this is harmful. And now once this narrative comes into the media and gets into the people's minds, so for some time, so when they eventually bring up this whole idea of banning those things, then people's mind will be engineered already. This kind of like psychological engineering has started. Now, this is my conspiracy theory part of this discussion. So this is one possibility. They'll, and this is not even a conspiracy theory actually. These are like very straightforward tactics used by businesses and politicians since long time. So if they want to introduce something, they will like start bringing it from a few months ago, once before it comes into the mainstream. I like I know myself, like where I work, even in a very small scale, they do it. Like uh, for a common people, you might look at movies. Like before the full trailer comes out, there are those very small, oh, I don't know what it's called, like teasers or something, which are like 30 seconds long. They come out way before, almost like uh, about a year before the actual movie is released. The trailer only comes about like 2 3 months before the movie is released. So this whole like warming up the people's minds to this whole thing begins a long time ago. Okay, so the point I was trying to make is that uh, this accusation might be something like that. It's a foreshadowing to this whole plan of banning this thing. So because if
But
they,
by
if,
the f- but the fact that these are open source models, like it will be difficult to outright ban them
uh,
because it is accessible to you.
yes,
You don't
what did you say?
necessarily have.
It's difficult to what?
It will be difficult to outright ban these models because they are open source.
Yes, yeah, yeah. I don't know how legally it can be banned, but yes,
Because once you have the weights, you can run them locally even.
yeah,
So this is, I think, everything that China does and everything that US tries to ban them for, they can, because they can try to ban their hardware because they will not have any physical route to sell it, or their software also because it is on their server. But when it comes to AI, everything China is releasing is they're releasing it in the open source domain, and that is a very tricky place for anyone to put any control over. So I think that is why US seems to be panicking more in terms of AI when it
yeah,
comes
it
to
could be,
China.
it could be, and. Yeah, so as you said, I don't know how they're going to go through these technical details of how to ban an open source software. But if they find some way to do it, then there is a chance that they might be doing it. Because if you look at some other technologies, they have already done it. Like if you look at EVs, there are no Chinese EVs in the United States. There are no Chinese EVs.
Yeah,
So that's how they've already done it. And one of the effects is that in Europe, like Chinese EVs are already dominating, like more than their own European cars. So that's already happening, which is kind of ironic because I think historically speaking, Europe was known for their car companies there. Most of these luxury car companies are mostly European. Audi, BMW, even Mercedes, everything, Ferrari, all of them are European companies. But now they are being dominated by Chinese companies because I think a whole new generation of like a different kind of technology is being used in cars. That's a different technology. The old technology is completely different.
Mm.
So yeah, so that was the first thing about getting banned or not banned. The second thing is from a business angle, which was that there was again the same thing when the reaction from a business point of view was similar to what happened when DeepSeek was first launched about 1.5 years ago. Is that the argument was that uh, if this model can be used more efficiently. So that is another point. Before I continue, that there's another point about Kimi K3. People are saying that it is much more efficient computationally to use this as compared to um, OpenAI's or Anthropic's latest models. Now, again, I'm not so sure how true that is, but assuming that to be true, let's assume that okay, Kimi K3 is computationally more efficient. So the argument was that there we keep hearing all over the news that more data centers are being built over and over again everywhere all the time. Why? Because it requires a lot of computational power and so on, those kind of things. But if it's efficient and if it can be if, can be released open source, if it can be open source, if it is efficient, then why do you need so much compute? Are American companies are the American AI models overvalued? That was the question. So if this overinvestment is actually a bubble, whatever this data centers are being built. So that's one way to think about it. But the counter argument is that it's actually not. Regardless of Chinese models being open source or not, from an infrastructure and energy point of view, it doesn't make a difference. Yes, the harm or the competition will be for the model makers like OpenAI and Anthropic because they will be directly hit by this one. But regardless of a person, whether they are using OpenAI's models or Anthropic models through API calls, or they are locally downloading an open source model and using them, either way they'll have to use the compute. So the demand for the hardware is the same regardless. And once the demand is there for hardware, and so definitely there will be demand for energy anyways. So hardware and energy the demand will remain same. The layer that will be affected is the compute layer. And by the way, the layer that I'm talking about is the 5-layer model for the AI infrastructure, for the AI industry. It's very similar to the kind of thing that I did for SpaceX, like this whole thing, no, not SpaceX, the space economy. Let me just show you yeah, so this is the most simplest way to look. Any one of them is fine. So these 5 layers. I slightly disagree with their fourth layer because the data could also be there. But anyways, I won't go there. But roughly, this is the way the whole AI industry can be understood, and the different companies working in anything related to AI. So there is energy, like all the energy companies are providing energy to these things. So that is obvious. Then there are chip companies. Maybe they're chief manufacturing companies or design companies. Like this layer will include NVIDIA, AMD, which are design companies, as well as manufacturing companies like TSMC. Infrastructure is those companies that are providing the AI data center services. because NVIDIA, they do not provide the data centers. They sell it to this infrastructure. They sell their processors to the AI infrastructure companies. They will provide the layers. They'll provide the whole infrastructure, like the full packaged one, and and they sell it to the model makers, which which finally are used by those companies that build the applications on top of them. So as I was saying, like open source model will only affect American companies working in the model layer. The other layer which are below them won't be affected. They will require the same amount of compute either ways. And in fact, there's another line of reasoning which says that if it is more cost efficient, if open source models are more cost efficient, then there might be a scenario that more use cases might come up. So all in all, the usage will be even more higher. So it's the same as saying that suppose let's assume that a light bulb costs a lot of rupee, a lot of money right now, or maybe the electricity costs a lot of money. So we will only use, let's say that one household will only use one bulb. But if suppose the cost of a bulb comes down significantly, so maybe the household will now use three instead of one. Or maybe the other households in the neighborhood who were poor enough earlier that couldn't afford a bulb, now they're buying bulbs. So all in all, the bulb being cheaper has caused more people to buy it and use it a lot more. So that's the similar thing might happen. That now that AI models are cheaper, let's use it for a lot of other use cases. They're not just cheaper, but equally as efficient. So it might happen like that.
Mhm.
So again, as I've said, the layer that will be affected are the model layers. The other three layers most likely are safe, which means the companies in the other three layers, they are safe. So the bad news about here is that, as I've said, OpenAI and Anthropic are all planning for their IPOs this year or earlier next year. And they are seeking a certain amount of valuations, I think nearly $1 trillion, something like that. So when a new model is released, which is open source with almost as good of a performance as these proprietary models, so then people will definitely ask the question that how would you justify your valuation as a proprietary model when there are other models that provide nearly as much good performance as you, but they're giving it away for free. So how do you justify your valuations? So their IPO price might come down as a result of this. So we don't know what's going to happen. And previously, I talked about this whole confidentially filing IPO that uh, if you're not sure if you want to go for an IPO or not, you can do this. And in that scenario, I talked about like there might come a situation like where they may not want to go through an IPO recently, and this has happened. So strategically, they were right to do it because
Mhm.
now they have this option of going postponing it further down, at least until it gets away from people's mind, this whole Kimi K3 thing. So that was that was it for this one. Also, roughly, I also may mention Inkling, which is also another open source model, which is from Thinking Machines, which is another one of OpenAI's former employee creating a new startup. So that is one of them. Yeah. So this was it for, yeah, this was mainly all the news from science and tech. Now, let me move to this one. Yeah. Okay. for macro and world affairs. Maybe if we have time, we'll come back to this at the end. But right now, actually, this is supposed to be philosophy. But anyways, this might go long, so I'd have to drink a bit of water. Okay, so the whole point of doing this was that I was trying to come up with a mental model of understanding what's the structure of American, like social and political structure of America right now. And it also became, I became interested as I was looking through different sources of media, like YouTube channels or websites, Substacks, and so on, because there are like uh, practically countless sources, and each of them have their own way of uh, what do you call, interpreting a single event. So what's actually happening there? So before that, okay, so let me just start with the practical thing. So here we have currently the Republicans are like ruling the country. Um, okay, let me start by. Okay, so on the one hand, from a political point of view, what we can see is that we have a Republican are really are in charge of the country, and their prime minister, their president is a billionaire. That's one. That's one fact. On the other hand, from the business and the corporate side point of view, what's happening is that there is a resurgence in, I mean, in US has always been at the front of technological innovations and doing things. But uh, since I follow a lot of business, specifically businesses or the VCs happening in the tech industry, what I've seen is that there has been this nationalistic message in whatever they're doing. So, for example, there has been a lot of defense tech startups and VC funds that are funding defense tech startups, as well as local manufacturing and so on. Because okay, and all of them, these are all defense manufacturing. Those are all aspects of technology. And the whole narrative that they're trying to push is this national interest, nationalism uh, message they're trying to like put it there. I mean, just like they're not trying to say that okay, we are funding these businesses just to make money, or we are creating these startups to make money. No, this is from a like to make our country stronger and so on. So that is the message that I'm seeing. So which made me like under like so I was confused like what's happening here, because it kind of there are some contradictions to my understanding about what's happening, because as I've said, they have a billionaire president, and VCs, the whole point of VC is a capitalist endeavor whose whole point is to make money. It is a business capitalist thing. It's not about equality for all and those kind of things. But then again, this Republican, the whole what is it, the whole voter base and the whole political philosophy is based on nationalism and conservatism. The nationalism and conservatism is about uh, like protecting our own culture and those kind of things. Like, and most importantly, they are that their messaging is populism. Populism is all about being anti-elite. So there are contradictions. So on the one hand, Republicans are they have the messaging of being anti-elite, but they have a billionaire president, which is so contradictory. So okay, so let me just now talk about a bit of theory, then I'll go to the practical interpretations of what's happening. So there's this concept of oligarchy, which means rule by a small group of elites, which is what I think uh, is where America is heading towards. So, and oligarchy is a more generic term. Uh, so this small group of elites could be anything. It could be a group of rich people, in which case they are known as plutocracy. And if that small group of people are religious leaders, then they are known as theocracy. So to be specific, currently I think what America is moving towards is more of a plutocracy. Those elites are going to be the rich peoples there.
Now, so when we say rule, does it have to be a government rule, or we are saying the government is just a puppet and there will be shadow figures behind the government?
Uh, Maybe it will start out as like the government working for the elites or the corporations in their favor, which is actually happening. I'll even show some evidence what's happening there. But eventually, I think initially it will start as something like that. There will be government, but it will favor uh, the concerns of the bigger corporations, the elites, the plutocrats, and less about the rest of the citizens. And the long-term prediction, which I think this will take a long time, more than 100 years or so, that nation states like countries will become irrelevant. Like there will no longer be countries as we know it. There will be corporations owning everything, which is even like you can't even imagine what does that even mean because we are so used to this way of governance. But this might be possible, but that's a very far future kind of thing. But so that is not a very that's not what I'm concerned about right now. Mostly about being ruled by a plutocrats, ruled by plutocrats. So okay, so that is on the one hand we have this oligarchy, the concept of oligarchy, and on the other hand, which is the concept of populism, which in some sense is the exact opposite of what oligarchy is. Oligarchy is all about rule by a small group of elites. Populism is all about giving power to the people. They're all about uh, being fed up with a few people controlling their whole existence and trying to take back power among the masses. So they present this problem. But then they go about solving this in two different ways. So there's this left-wing populism and there's the right-wing populism. So left-wing is, I think it's quite more common to understand. The whole philosophy of socialism and communism is that the property should be owned by the people and there shouldn't be any for-profit organizations in the economy. So I don't think right now there are any countries that have this kind of system. Now, pure socialism and communism does not exist currently. Of course, there are like I would say, which is called the Keynesian economics, Kaynes, Keynesian economics, which says that free market but with a little bit of government, not just little bit, substantial amount of government control. But that's a topic for another day. That's not what I'm talking about. But in theory, that's what the left-wing populism's solution is. On the other hand, there's the right-wing populism, whose solution is nationalism and conservatism. So as I've written here, the whole premise is that the common people are suffering because there are foreign competitors, the government bureaucracy has become too much, and there are elites in the country, and so on. They're taking a lot of those things. So some of the ways that they try to tackle it is to prevent anything from outside the country to come into their country, whether it's goods and services or whether it's people. So in terms of people, they do border control measures. In terms of goods and services, they do it through tariffs and yeah, mostly tariffs. And yes, those kind of things. And yes, so that's the idea of populism in theory. So their whole argument is that by doing this kind of things, the people within the country will benefit. The average normal people of the country will benefit. So in theory, these are two different philosophies, completely opposite of each other. So but in practice, what's happening in the US, as I see it, is that the oligarchs are using the philosophy of populism for their own benefit. That's the thing that's happening actually. What is the next slide? Okay, so I haven't completed yet. So anyway, the point was that both politically as well as business-wise, they are using this populism narrative to make the environment favorable for themselves, not the general public. Let me start from there are two ways, from the business side and from the political side. And eventually they end up with the same thing. From the business side, I've already said that this whole narrative has become like this nationalist narrative that we should build for our country, like those kind of things. So what will happen, like if you support building things for your own country, but these are not state-owned things. These are not the government doing. These are startups doing. And as I said, one thing that I mentioned, forgot to mention is that the one company that I was talking about is A16Z. Like this is one of the most popular VCs, and Andreessen Horowitz, and they themselves have created a they have a whole manifesto for themselves. They have written a manifesto called the Techno Optimist Manifesto. This is the techno it's just quite a long article, but the whole point of this thing was that I can see on this is our civilization was built on technology. Our civilization is built on technology. So they are saying that okay, technology is the root, is the foundation for the advancement of a civilization or a nation, which I completely agree, which is definitely true. The reason United States are so powerful compared to a country like India is because they are technologically superior to us. They have superior technology. Like we have just described that in 2026, India just launched their first private rocket to space. United States has been doing it for 2 decades now, so they're far more capable than us. When it comes to semiconductor smartphones, India is practically non-existent compared to US. So technology. So this is a statement I definitely agree with. But then again, who owns this technology? Companies. It's not the government, unlike earlier. Previously, most of the innovations came from the Department of Defense, those kind of things, government-owned entities. And technically, the citizens only anything that's made by government. But when private companies are building those things, the citizens, the normal citizens, they do not own any of those things. So if this kind of technologies become important, that means those companies become important. That means the owners of those companies, the people who have the shares of those companies, the founders, and most importantly, the VCs. VCs don't give away their money for free. They give in exchange for percentage ownership in their company. So if one of their companies is building on some very critical technology and that company becomes big, the VCs own that company. So they become powerful. The VCs become powerful. So this is how they are concentrating power. So they're using this this populism narrative that we should build things in our country. By this, they are trying to remove the competition from other countries. Maybe this narrative will help them ban other technologies, the ones that I've just talked about, like trying to ban open source AI or trying to ban EVs from other countries, so that the local companies can build those technologies. And most importantly, those are not government-owned entities. Those are being owned by private individuals, and they will get richer from that. So this whole thing that's happening is that they are trying to use this nationalist narrative to gain power for themselves.
But
So
also in the
here,
process of them getting richer, they will also inevitably be making at least few more other people also wealthy. Essentially,
yes,
they are increasing the value of their economy.
uh, yes, if you you're correct, like a few people uh, will become rich, not like it's not just the founders or the VCs are rich, like the early employees which get like share options, they become rich. But even those included, they are a very small percentage of this whole population, practically 1% of those things, like because a country is made up of millions of people. So a few companies, even if the whole company, everyone in that company, if let's say 1,000 of them, they all become millionaires, which is still a very small share of the whole country. That's one thing. And the second thing is that the whole idea of business is to make profit above anything else. And a lot of these things require them to do things which are against which affects people and the environment time and time again. And if these people are in power, they can put policies in their favor. For example, let me talk about SpaceX's now. SpaceX's uh, the whole launch thing. The place where they do it is near to an ocean, and so in there. So every time they launch, it affects the flora and fauna of that niche of that area. This kind of things happen. And when it comes to data centers, we all know what's happening, like water related issues, uh, and just people, whoever is living near the data centers, they are facing issues. So those are human problems. Yes, some of them are getting rich off this kind of things, but there are people who are being affected by this. There isn't a good representation of the common people in a government in a nation. Their voices will remain unheard of, and the businesses will think like, if a few people die, let them die. We have to think about the big picture. People are going to die one way or another anyways. So let them die. If that is the attitude that will be if there is everyone in power. And as you said, like people will benefit. Yes, that's true. But people will also suffer. And there has to be a voice for the common people as well, which if more and more power comes to lesser and lesser people, there will be less representation of the rest of the population and less things happening from their perspective. So that's my point here. And do you want to say something here, or you can-
So this is the current situation of the way of governance. What is the let's say the solution to this, or even theoretically, where could we go from here that will be more towards the people or for the people?
uh, practically see again, like practically I'm not very sure, because in theory I would say that it's not even a bad thing for someone to have a lot of power as long as that person has good intentions. So that goes against what democracy is all about. But from my point of view, that's not fundamentally a bad thing. But the whole point has to be about less, like having regulations which are less about giving power to the corporations and big tech companies, whether it's in terms of surveillance and those kind of things. So those kind of things has to be controlled as much as possible. But practically how to achieve that, yes, I'm not very sure how to do this kind of things. And yes, and again, at the fundamental level, I think like it has to come down to the education and the critical thinking abilities of the people too. It has to come down to this.
Beyond that also, so for example, now the US has elected a Republican Party as the majority, and
Yes,
in theory, uh, they are marketing or their agenda is nationalism,
yes,
which ideally should benefit the people.
yes,
So majority of the people thought that this would be good for their country, for themselves. So they voted Republican
yes.
and they elected him. Now he seems to be prioritizing the elites, the corporates, and not really working for the people. What and it is a working. It's like it is a part of a democracy. It's not even a communist state or something like that. So people use their thinking ability. They elected the person that thought would act in their behalf or in their benefit. But once in power, he has changed his ways of acting. What can anyone do at this point?
Well, now democratically, nothing has. I don't think like, you can't do anything like for until the next election, because what can you do? Like you've already elected them, so nothing can be done. The thing is that you have to do self introspections. Like what have I done? But that being said, as I've said, but it's a tricky thing. Like mm, the other option isn't any good either, because as I've come to show you here, that this is populism. There are two solutions to this: the right wing populism and the left wing. So we can say that the Republicans have chosen this path. This is their strategy. I would say yes, but they also are representing a let's say group A of elites, group A elites. They are group A, group A elites. Again, the spelling is wrong. REPUB. Now, on the other hand, what might happen. Again, this is not like a fact of nature of reality, but this is what my understanding is that what Democrats might do is that they might. So these people might think that, okay, what have you done? We have now elected a billionaire uh, to solve our problems, but he's not solving our problems. Now let's go to the other side now. Now, what might end up turning this that the Democrats are using this bait to lure the people so that they can support this group B elites. Now, this group B elites could be some other group of elites. Their objective is the same. Like we also want to keep power to ourselves, but we are taking another approach, like socialist and communist approach. So we have again like in the US left wing, there are people like uh, the most common one is Bernie Sanders. Okay, like he is, I mean, at least socially active in social media. The other person is Zohran Mamdani, who is also a I'd say more of a left-wing person. He's the mayor of the New York. So those are his things. So I haven't gone deeper into their whole philosophy. I mean, broadly, I know that they're left-wing, but beyond that, are they just using this socialism as a front to help another group of elites, or are they genuinely socialist? That I am cannot verify now because I haven't done enough research. But when it comes to nationalism, it looks very obvious, like at least relatively clear that nationalism is a front for them to serve this group A of elites. That okay, yes, that's the thing. So I'll need to do further research for this one, whether this is true or this is not true. So ultimately, uh, the fight is between these haves and have-nots, but they are also both. But the haves are using different techniques to influence the lower ones. Some are using left-wing populism and some are using right-wing populism for this. So again, I have to understand what's their strategy, people in the left. I'll go through some videos of Zoran Mamdani too right now, but that's the thing. So yes, your question was that what can be done. I don't think currently anything can be done, but I think at the most fundamental level, like more educational awareness, and I think it sounds very simple and straightforward, but that's what the truth is. Like more awareness, critical thinking from the regular people's perspective has to come in and not get swayed away by the narratives pushed by anyone. That's the most obvious thing. Like it's like very simple, but it's the truth. It's like saying like, how do I get fit? Like workout. Like you're saying like that's the very simple answer. I need like details. Like, but that's the truth. That's the truth. It's very simple. Like this is I think like I need a complex answer. It can't be that simple. Otherwise I would have done it. But the truth is that that's the truth. That one line word is the truth. Yes. So another thing is I didn't complete this one. I told you about how from the business point of view it's happening. But what about the other point of view, political point of view? As you have just said, like they have elected Donald Trump, who is a billionaire. So how can you elect a billionaire and expect him to serve the a populist point of view, a populist philosophy? From what I found, this is how they are trying to justify Trump being a
Okay, I
billionaire
have
and still voting for them.
one question before that. So in US, do people select the person or the party?
They select a person, not the party.
Be- Because here we do not elect the person, right? We vote for a party, not for the person.
Yes, but there they select a person, not the party, because before the whole competition between the representative from Democrats and Republicans happen, there is an internal competition between their own faction too, out of which there is one representative that then goes on to compete with the actual one.
So both are the internal one. Who is voting for the internal ones? The people or the politicians?
No, the people.
Okay.
I think most likely, I'm not. Yes, I think most likely it's the people because they go on this whole roadshow about in the same way that debates happen between the Democrat and Republican candidates. So within the same party as well, same kind of votes happen, like debates and votes happen. Okay, so as I was saying, like the justification behind Trump being a billionaire and still serving populist uh, policies would be that it's most see the nationalists and conservatives are mostly focused on culture and values rather than pure money alone. So even among elites, they have like two mentally they have divided into two categories. There are the good elites and the bad elites. So the bad elites from them are the people who are mostly, I would say, like more advanced in their thinking and those kind of things. So people who are like they do not respect religion, who mock Christianity, which is the dominant religion in the United States, and people who are more global in nature. Like so, those are the kind of people that they are opposed
So
to.
basically, like liberals.
Yes, yes, technically, yes, those are the things because they affect their culture and values. Because again, like global businesses and everything, both they affect commerce, like both at the business level and at a cultural level. Because when you open your country to other countries, there will be influx of foreign people in the country. So economically, what's happened is that you are as a laborer or as a worker, you will have more competition. So that's one of the reasons why this whole immigration thing is it resonates with the people, the populist people, because now they have a certain kind of job, but people from other countries come to their country and like do the same job for lesser pay. So they get like offended by that. Like, yes, why are they coming here? So if you control the immigration, then there will be less competition for them. That is one of the logic behind that. So that's one of the things. So there is the economic point of view, and obviously from the cultural point of view, it's very obvious. Like different cultures will come in your country. They will have their own way of doing things, which you might not resonate with what's going on there. So those are different things. So again, like so they might get offended. Like okay, we've been doing things this way for so many years. Now people from other parts of the world come and do things their way. So those kind of things. So the as the name suggests, conservative. Like their objective is to conserve what already existed. So that's one thing. And being rich is another way. Instead of if you if you look at it in a positive way, being rich is an example of competence because that means you have worked hard and achieved something. And again, remember that these are right-wing populists. These are not left-wing populists. Left-wing populists, they do not want private property. They want like this socialist communist thing, like everything should be shared equally. No one should own anything. But these right-wing populist people, they do not believe in that thing. They want like there should be private property. Like we should be able to have your own business, work hard. The whole idea is that there should not be government handouts like okay like oh everyone like nobody someone is working regardless if someone is working a lot and someone isn't working at all should be given equal things. It shouldn't be like that. Like your hard work should be rewarded as per the amount of work you're doing. So in that way if someone is rich that's a symbol that okay this man has worked hard and reached to a certain level. But this competition should be there, but at the same time, it should be balanced by preserving our traditional values and culture. It should not come at, like, we are doing competition, but it has to be within our own country. Others shouldn't come there and pollute our way of life. That's their internal way of viewing things. So in that way, uh, Trump is how that is how they view Trump. Like, he is a rich person. That means he's a successful and accomplished person who did things by hard work. I'm not sure how much he did by hard work or how much he has inherited. I'm not sure, but that's how people view him. And in terms of maintaining, like, preserving culture and values, I think he is doing a good job of convincing them, because all the immigration kind of things that are happening there. I think the populists are quite happy with what he is doing. I think look, even during the World Cup, some Iranian players or maybe some of the members of the team are not allowed to come to the United States during the World Cup. So a lot of such kind of things have happened. So in terms of immigration, they were doing a good job, we can say. So that's the way how people view Donald Trump and the whole conservative thing. So now I think I can finally come down to this different media that I'm looking at. So let me look at the left and the right at first. Because, okay, so these are the kind of peoples who are quite anti-elite. And I've separated anti-elite versus the socialist communist, and on this side, the pro-elite and the right wing. There might be overlap, but there might not be as well. So let me start with this. Okay, I think I should start with this one, right-wing populists. I think Ben Shapiro is the most famous example I can find of a right-wing populist, because he is very much strong on traditional values and those kind of and that kind of things. But I think he himself is a Jewish, but he's not Christian. So, but anyways, he's a very good example of this. The American Conservative is a website. It's a magazine. It's a magazine, but it is also an online website, which is also talks about uh, this thing from from a conservative and a nationalist point of view. And I have separated these two things because, as I've said, technically, elite and populism are completely opposite of each other. As I've said, like, all it doesn't even make sense to put them in the same thing, because it one is about power being with the majority of people, one is power being concentrated among a few group of people. But I have grouped it this way because this group of people use populism to support, like, to get themselves to power. And there are certain people who, even from the right wing, who are populist, but they do not directly criticize this group of people, because in practice they are now kind of have to work together, because since their president, for example, in practically their president is Donald Trump, who is a billionaire, and he supports a lot of things that are happening in favor of big tech corporations. Now, if you look at Ben Shapiro, he will never criticize Trump. He will never criticize Trump, even though some of his some of Trump's actions are harming populists, because the common people are getting affected because of Trump's policies or his actions. So this should, in theory, upset this group of people, the right-wing populists. But in some ways, they tend to keep quiet, because right now they are part of the same overall group. So they tend to keep quiet. So this is what I think. This is how I understand things are happening right now. And When it comes to pro elite media, it is mostly like VCs and like rich people, the media from the rich people. Like the clearest example is the All In podcast, which has like four people, four of them are multimillionaires, and they find every opportunity to promote why business and capitalism is superior. So all of their content is all about that. Then A16Z is a VC company. I've mentioned it twice, but anyways, A16Z and most VC media platform. Nowadays, you'll find lots and lots of VC YouTube channels and Substacks, like Sequoia Capital, and there are multiple of them. So all of them try to put like content that supports like businesses and how it's definitely developing the country and so on, those kind of things. Then I would like to talk about this anti-elite media. And now that I can think of it, I think like this is like instead of calling it anti-elite, it's like anti-capitalist elite kind of media. Because okay, let me just say anti-capitalist elite media. The publications in this category, what they do is they find, and if they find any opportunity to trash one of these billionaires for the technology or their personal lives, they will do it. I've seen The Verge do quite a bit when it comes to Elon Musk or mostly Elon Musk. But it's kind of ironic because on the other hand, they also bring in a lot of tech CEOs to talk to them. So I'm not sure whether they have single stance politically and philosophically. I think they do it as long as they get some views, something like that. I'm not. That's why I've mentioned to an extent. But then there are other channels. The More Perfect Union is a great example of anti-capitalist elite media. Like they have, like they're one of the best, I can say. I will say, let me show you. Again, like this private equity, they have done something like that. Amazon, Trump, surveillance, Peter Thiel. So anything related to technology, like big tech technology, they will have content related to that. So yeah, they are completely from that perspective. And then there's the left-wing populist media, like Richard Wolff is a Marxist economist. He has a channel who talks about those point of from that point of view. Bernie Sanders is a politician. Again, he too talks about that point of view. So, I mean, the reason I'm mentioning this thing is because uh, to keep myself self-aware, like whenever I'm listening to these people from these different buckets, I want to be able to know that from which uh, angle they're trying to come with, so that I understand like, okay, this is what they're trying to uh, say, because otherwise it becomes very confusing to understand like what is their like stance on a certain thing. So this kind of mapping helps understand like what's actually happening. So anything to say? Yeah.
No, not really.
I think let me start with some on this page. Yeah.
When I ran for mayor, I said I was going to tax the rich.
Wait a minute. Can you hear it?
You have not played it yet.
Wait a minute. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I'll start. And you can also hear the audio here of the video.
You have to play it first.
When I ran for mayor, I said I was going to tax the rich. Well, today, we're taxing the rich. I'm thrilled to announce we've secured a pied-à-terre tax, the first in New York's history. This is an annual fee on luxury properties worth more than $5 million, whose owners do not live full-time in the city. Like for this penthouse, which hedge fund CEO Ken Griffin bought for $238 million. This pied-à-terre tax is specifically designed for the richest of the rich, those who store their wealth in New York City real estate, but who don't actually live here. But even so, they're able to reap the huge financial rewards of owning property in, dare I say, the greatest city in the world. And most of the time, these units are sitting empty, since again, they don't actually live here. This is a fundamentally unfair system that hurts working New Yorkers. Now, it's coming to an end. This tax will raise at least $500 million directly for the city. It'll help fund things like free childcare, cleaner streets, and safer neighborhoods. As mayor, I believe everyone has a role to play in contributing to our city, and some a little bit more than others. Happy Tax Day, New York.
Like I say, it's the first pied-à-terre tax, which is a fee on luxury apartments worth more than 5 millions, whose owners don't live full-time here. Okay, I don't know much about that, but at least he's doing that thing. Now let's see what else does he have to say. Rich New Yorker versus Mamdani. Does he have to say?
You know the old cliche about imitation being the sincerest form of flattery? Safe to say, Zohran Mamdani's campaigning and governing style has inspired a lot of flattery.
If I was the mayor, I'd be working with city council from day one to make halal $8 again.
So when you walk into the voting booth next November, remember this $25 turkey leg.
We've seen a lot of vertical video from Democratic politicians across the country. Every day now I see a vertical video from the mayor, the latest one unveiling his new plan to tax wealthy people's second homes in the city.
When I ran for mayor, I said I was going to tax the rich. Well, today,
Can you create a summary of this
Mayor,
video?
I believe
See what
everyone
they're
has a
talking
role
about.
to play.
So this
Looks like
Catherine Wild, is she left or right?
I don't know, but at least from like a top end. Both of them are like rich people, I'd say, I think. But one of the rich people seems like doesn't agree with it. The other one agrees with it. So let me ask. He emphasizes that the policies targeting wealthy homeowners must strike a balance, ensuring the city raises revenue without discouraging investment or driving affluent residents away. Our concern is that overly aggressive taxation could harm New York's economic vitality rather than strengthen it. And I mean, this is the kind of argument I have heard earlier too. Like whenever there is a talk about taxing the rich, what might happen is that the rich people might just leave that city or that country and move to somewhere else. So that is one of the things that they're talking about. And then what will happen is that uh, I mean, by default, they are also paying some kind of tax anyways. But if you put extra tax, they will go away completely. So the normal tax that you're getting from those rich people, you won't even get that. So all in all, it's a loss for you. That's one of the arguments that I see. I don't know how to counter that, but that's the argument that I hear. Let's see if from her mouth what she has to say.
Of the mayor. What do you think of this new tax?
Well, in general, taxes should not be presented as punitive. And I think generally the taxpayers feel that if they have a legitimate reason for raising a tax. At the partnership, we supported, for example, congestion pricing to support the funding of the MTA. We supported when Mayor Bloomberg, after 9/11, had to raise the real estate tax to be able to bring back the city's services after the damages, rebuild Lower Manhattan. We supported that tax. So we were not knee-jerk anti-tax, but it was being clear that this is not punishment. This is something that's needed. The city has taken every step they can, or the state, to save money where they can, to get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse, and then to have a conversation and a process about what makes most sense, what's fairest in terms of tax increases, and to make sure it's going, as the mayor said earlier, that it's going to a good cause.
But this does, I mean, the whole
Yes, I mean, that's what the summary says. Like, should not be unfair. I found these videos. I mean, this video is going to talk about this. I think Rubin Report, he is more in the Republican side of things. So definitely this will be a criticism. Critics in the discussion argue that the policy is performative, likening his announcement to theater, and warning it could trigger a collapse in high-end real estate values, driving investors away. They claim such measures amount to class warfare, risk economic fallout, and reflect socialist policies that ultimately harm the city rather than help working families. How? Okay, if wealthy buyers avoid New York due to the tax, demand for high-end properties could fall sharply. A drop in luxury real estate price can drag down overall property values, reducing city revenue from property taxes. Investors may shift capital elsewhere, slowing construction and development projects that create jobs. If revenue falls instead of rising, the city could cut back on public services, housing, and those kind of things, and working class families most. In short, opponents believe that tax risks shrinking the economic pie rather than redistributing it. Okay, this is what they're saying. Okay, so I can see the logic what they're trying to say. At least in theory, I understand the logic, but again, I'm not educated enough in this area to know how if it's practically going to happen this way or not. Okay. Yeah, so this is the understanding that I have. Oh yes, now that I've seen Joe Rogan, I also remember this thing. Like recently, like people are saying like he has become a lot more biased in the recent years. Like, but initially his whole image was that to be an open-minded person, like talk with people from all areas. But recently, most of his people are right-wing person, or they're capitalists, or they're right-wing. So that's one of the criticism that's coming about him. That's something I wanted to briefly mention. Now talking about, yes, another video that I had for a long time that I wanted to show is about how normal people are affected if people's voices are not represented.
One day and being told the home. All right, imagine waking up one day and being told the home your family has lived in for years is going to be demolished to help power the AI boom, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. That is what is happening to some homeowners in Georgia. They've been given an ultimatum: sell your home.
Can you increase the
or
speed for
take
this?
it. Utility giant Georgia Power is planning to build a new transmission line so it can handle new data centers. Skylar Henry has more from a county just outside Atlanta.
I'm a single mom. I worked hard for everything.
How do you put a price on a home you never intended to sell? One filled with more than 2 decades of memories.
I think I was 5 or 6 when this was built.
The treehouse where you grew up playing pretend. The yard where you buried your pets. The greenhouse that fed your family.
When you talk about what being on this property means to you, right? It's y'all's.
It's ours. It's ours. It's my mom's. It's mine. It's my daughter's. It's our family. We belong here.
But Ansley Brown's childhood home likely won't be here much longer. That's because the state's largest utility, Georgia Power, says it needs the area to make way for a 35-mile-long transmission line.
Georgia Power has been here for as long as Ansley's mother has owned this property. It's just beyond the tree line. Now, with the expansion of this latest project, they're looking to take the 2.5 acres the house sits on.
Georgia Power says increasing demand from homes, businesses, and data centers has outpaced the capacity of its existing grid, and building a new transmission line requires acquiring more than 300 parcels of land, including residential properties.
What did your mom tell you she wanted for this property to be?
Generational wealth. So I have a young daughter. This home is supposed to go to her. True generational wealth was the idea, and now it's being stripped from us.
Georgia Power estimates 70 to 80% of the power on this new line is expected to help serve data centers, being built in part to support the growing demands of artificial intelligence. It says the remaining 20 to 30% of power will serve the state's growing residential and commercial demand.
All power generation starts somewhere.
Holly Lovett is a Georgia Power spokesperson.
We take into factor our customers, first and foremost. They are at the center of our business and the core of what we do. We want them to be able to have their daily lives, and we take that seriously. It is something needed for survival, and we empathize with these community members who are seeing this growth.
Georgia Power told us that they feel as if they've done this process responsibly. What would you say to that?
I disagree. You can't tear down 35 miles of rural Georgia and it not hurt something or somebody. And to say that you're doing it in the name of data centers is a slap in the face to us, our community, our animals.
Brown's mother recently came to an agreement with Georgia Power to sell. Brown says if she didn't, the utility could have sought to acquire her property through eminent domain.
That person, I thought they were sisters. Like, so okay, this is the grandmother, mother, and okay.
Georgia Power to sell. Brown says if she didn't, the utility could have sought to acquire her property through eminent domain, a legal process that allows private property to be taken with compensation for projects determined to serve a public purpose.
Eminent domain is always, a last resort for us, and it's something we never want to do.
To us, it's theft. It's literally a billion-dollar company stealing land from smaller people who can't fight back. We don't have the money to fight Georgia Power.
So that's why a few months ago, Ansley took her story to TikTok.
My childhood home is being taken by Georgia Power.
Her videos went viral, and she began sharing stories of others in similar situations, like Cynthia Van Epps.
What is it taking from her? Look behind me. It's taking this entire backyard, the pool, and
I think we got the message, but there's a term that was mentioned here. Let's see.
our animals.
Brown's mother recently came to an agreement with Georgia Power to sell. Brown says if she didn't, the utility could have sought to acquire her property through eminent domain.
Eminent domain, yeah. Government authorized taking of private property. Property owners must receive compensation used for projects deemed to serve a public purpose. I think something similar happens in India too, because all the road, when I see it, like there are road constructions happening, like half of the house is gone, like, and they're reconstructing it. So in that case, like you don't have any other option. Like you don't have a choice. Like I don't want to sell. Like you have to sell it. Like they will give you money, but you have to give it. So I think it's called eminent domain.
A legal process that allows private property to be taken with compensation for projects determined to serve a public purpose.
Eminent domain is all.
So again, this comes back to what I was initially pointing out. Like there is this government the government is a system. It's like it's a system, but it depends on who is in charge of it. That can use the existing systems and then modify it to their own benefits. So that's the whole point. Like you can think of it like this. Okay, like suppose now if these people, whoever is in charge, if those are the rich people or like any group of people, and there are other people who are in good connections with those people who are in power. So then definitely they will get more favor in their own terms, which here you can see. Like if it was in theory, if it was a more of a populist person who was in charge, they would have come around and said that okay, we can figure out some other solution, but we are not going to take away a person's home. But certainly this is not happening here. So, and this is why it matters. And let me see the one final thing before I end it. And which country was this? Yeah. I don't remember it was Uruguay or something, maybe most likely Uruguay, but this person, like the president, I don't know if it's whether he's the current president or the former president, but he lived in a regular home. He was not some kind of a billionaire, nor he had a lot of property. He just lived in a regular home, did regular things. I mean, in the business world, like he's something like Warren Buffett. Like he's like for a long time he is one of the most richest person on this planet, even right now, one of the richest person. But lives like a regular person, lives in a regular home, drives a regular car, eats McDonald's. Like he lives like a middle class person. That's what I'm trying to say. Even though he's one of the richest person in this planet. So why am I saying this? Is that if someone like them is in charge, then things could go in a different direction as compared to a billionaire being in charge. So that was my whole point here. So anything else do you have to say?
No.
Okay, so I think we can end here. But just 2 minutes since I'm just talking about this, about the World Cup, since that's the thing. So the predictions that I made, one of them was wrong, and yes, only one of them was wrong. Which the one that I was more confident about was ultimately that was the one which I got wrong. I
France
said
versus
that
Spain, right?
yes, I said France versus Spain. France is going to win, and then France is going to win the final. But I also said this thing that I'm very confident that France is going to win against Spain. But regardless, whoever wins that game, whoever wins France versus Spain is going to win the World Cup. So I can like in my defense that was partially correct. Spain did win the World Cup. On that side, I was correct. Argentina won. But yes, that was my thing. That was the most unexpected thing. Like, how did France not win that game?
Like I saw some post or meme like they were creating a top 11 players from the like 11 players they've selected to create a team
Yes,
from who have performed the best in the World Cup, and all the defenders were from Spain. And I think they conceded only one goal this whole tournament, right?
yes, yes. So defensively, they were very good. That was one thing. And yes, but attacking wise, they do not have the like the most well-known players compared to France. But one explanation that I can come up with is that like small things might change the whole momentum of the game. Like that penalty that uh, Spain got, like that gave them a bit of confidence. Like again, as you said, they're the best defense in the team, and now they have a lead. And they're going to double down on their defense and not allow them to win at any costs. And again, and psychologically too, like once you are a goal down, like it creates some kinds of pressure on yourself. So things started to go very bad in France's favor. So like small things like changes the whole thing about the game. That is why prediction is quite difficult. But at the same time, I got some of it correct. Speaking of that, there is a video there who a person made this video about a month ago, and he predicted that Spain is going to win, and he was correct. I'm not going to go through the whole video. I'm just going to show that this video exists.
I think I might have seen it.
Yes. It's not showing here, but there is a video that says that. So, yeah. Yes, and yes, that was about it. And the third place, I did not make a prediction about the third place match. Yes. And because
I
it was
think
going to be
third
different.
place match was much more interesting to watch, at least much
Yes.
more entertaining.
Yes, it was a lot more entertaining. That should have been the final because I think in terms of playing style too, like both of them are quite attacking. Like I think if they played the final, they might have been more conservative in their defense, but still it would have been comparatively high scoring compared to what happened the 1-0 win. And anyways, the third place match would have been difficult to predict because nobody would have been like as competitive as they would have been in a more serious game because like there's nothing to win here apart from having fun, which they did. And yes, and in that process, Mbappe also overtook Messi to become the all-time scorer in the World Cup and this tournament too. So I think throughout the whole tournament, Messi was leading on and on and on, becoming the all-time scorer. But now Messi has 21 and Mbappe has 22. So Messi held one record for a very brief period of time.
And Mbappe most likely will play at least one or two more World Cup.
Yeah, from my point of view, at least two World Cup he will play, at least two, because he's 27 now, so 31 and 35, he can play 2 more World Cups. I don't think Messi is going to play anymore. Yeah, and yes, I think the next prediction will be about Ballon d'Or, who's going to win it, but I'll do it on the next video, maybe in the next future discussions. I mean, but anyways, briefly, I think in theory Mbappe should win it, but I don't think he's going to win it. Anyways, I'm going to talk about it later on some other videos. So I think we can stop this one recording.